first of all, as I'm not a native speaker and that English reputation, I'm quite good at reading. I'm not so good at speaking. In listening, I'm sucking. So the definition of occult, which I use, is everything from supernatural to initiate knowledge to myth. So I mix everything intermediate. So start occult and role-playing is quite obvious in fantasy role-playing games, pen and paper LARP. They use occult and myth in many ways. In high fantasy, even gods could work or whatever earth they're playing. Even in science fiction, you can get some kind of magic like psychic power or crossovers like Shadowrun where cyberpunk and fantasy got mixed. And retelling history is also part of role-playing as ever, like you either recurring on the ancient myth, so like taking monsters from there, or taking the Odyssey as the unique tale you always use in lots of scenarios. Also, bits and parts of history is used as a background to get it more feel real. And naturally, what this is a bit more about in horror RPGs, history is told with a supernatural twist. So like, we have to go first back to a special German problem, maybe. If you're walking around with history with the 1920s, you always come to the political right, as they used esoteric and myth for their own purpose. So, like many racial nationalist and anti-Semitic groups and organizations like the Cthulhu Gesellschaft, and this is their side, and they use the swastika in a way as a side of their super white supremacist power, as well as they used some kind of Celtic sword, although they always recur on Germanic tradition. And the Nazis incorporated these ideologies for their own purpose. They made their manifest destiny from all those esoteric and historical bits and parts and used it as a legislation of their crimes. So when it comes to the SS, they not only built concentration camps, but they had their only Grail castle built at Wewelsburg, and they went to the Black Sound, which is used now by many neo-Nazis as a sign, because the swastika is banned in Germany, and if you saw someone in Germany with this sign, you kind of guess he's a Nazi. So that's always a problem. So we didn't have a satanic panic in the 1980s, but a Nazi panic when role-playing games came into schools. Some teachers always thought something to do with the Nazis. But getting back to Cthulhu. Okay, Cthulhu is pop. Nothing to say, you find Cthulhu everywhere. Like Hell Cthulhu, you find it in literature. They are in South Park, they are everywhere. And we have to talk a bit about problems with H.P. Lovecraft, because he was a bit too positive about fascism, as well as some say a bit like white Anglo-Saxon Protestant racism in some tales is quite obvious. But anyway, Cthulhu is pop. Also, is a bit special. The monsters are not taken from myth. They are aliens, extraterrestrial beings, often with high-tech devices. As you said, high-tech is you couldn't call high-tech from magic sometimes. And myth is only incorporated to make the stories or to give them a real feeling. So there are lots of RTGs called Cthulhu. The first one was published in 1981. In the meantime, there was more Trail of Cthulhu, Affen Cthulhu, Mythos World Vertagen with as a German fan-based RPG. So the first German was published in 1986, and the first source book, which you could see here, was published in 1988, and it's incorporated German backgrounds. So you could see some extinct, it's a St. Dweller at the Brandenburg Gate. And it is it's special at Germany, because Germany has lots of localizations. So fun thing or strange thing. The first book, source book on Wales, was published and written by Germans. So, okay, we got the Berlin source book, we got a German resource book, but this is not a book, this is a box where you can find lots of handouts. And this is quite special for the German stuff, as we try to incorporate lots of pictures and photographs. And this is the first, as would say, the first scenario after which explodes some kind of the German side of Call of Cthulhu. It was published in a Pension Zauberzeit in 1989, and it goes from Vienna, where it can even mean Sigmund Freud, as well as it ends in the Black Forest. Schwarzwald means Black Forest, and you have to stop cult. This is also quite typical German. You do research and then you stop cult. But most important is VR style. Nearly any publication afterwards used these art style. And a very, very famous a classic scenario is the Froschkönig Fragmente, which was published first in 1993, and it was now republished in Reworth in just last year. It uses the fairy tale from Brothers Grimm, The Frog Prince, and gives another explanation where it could come from, because it says it's in the Harz, which is a mountainous area in the middle of Germany. There are ponds who connect with the dreamlands, and so the frogs come out, are the people of it, or deep ones, I don't know, I don't remember quite, as you could see here, and they come in the real world. It also uses lots of mockery and handouts, and just to immerse the players. And it goes even further, as Aufhebingsen at the islands is a interlinked scenarios, 3 scenarios, and they come in a box with, as I told, lots of handouts, German love handouts. And they even incorporated a tourist guide for the 1920s to the islands, sequence, and incorporated the sagas of the northern islands. And they also incorporated some myths and sagas from the North Sea, like the Lost Sea of Rungholt, which was lost at the late Middle Ages by a flood, and Ekenekepen, which is some kind of merman from Sylt, which is the northern one of the northern Frisian islands. And there is even a fictional tower like Aachen, which is invented by Pegasus Press, who published that in Germany, and there are lots of more scenarios. But no, you're back. What I've done, I've written for the Lovecrafter. This is the magazine of the German Lovecraft Society. Some kind of source book, but on how Hannover was in the 1920s to use in Call of Cthulhu. And I incorporated the tourist guide from the 1920s, as well as lots of myth and saga, and as well as my own research, which I've done on the 4 Mile, which had happened in Hannover during the post-revolutionary crisis, the German Civil War, which happened from 1918 to 1923. Yes, as well as lots of publications. And from this source book, I will tell you a bit of adventure scenes where I used history around of it, mixed it with Cthulhu stuff. And the first one is Für den König, for the king. This is a scenario I've written for Hannover, and my attempt was to bring different types of incidents together, as I used the Kapkutsch, which was a white ring coup in 1920 to get rid of the Young Republic, and which was countered by the workers with a general strike. And that lasted only 7 days, and then the coup was over. And I used it as background for a story of a student gone mad. This student was soldier in World War I, suffering from post-traumatic stress disease, and he got set on a palimpsest, a parchment, which was used again after the first script was erased, and this is a written ritual on going die hard, which was used by the Landsknechts in the 30 Years' War. But in fact, it is an invocation of the Yellow King, so there's lots of madness around as the Yellow King brings madness. And so the PCs, the clan characters, have to stop the students from sacrifice a child. And I incorporated local myth as there's Das Rad, which is a labyrinth made during the 30 Years' War by soldiers, and the Marktkirche, which is a special landmark, as on the tower of this church. There are not only two crosses, but also the David Star and a pentagram, and the pentagram on its point, so it's like the evil pentagram. As well, I incorporate the historical stuff, as there was a firefight between workers and students at the university, and roadblocks of work research, and also to make special the veil of reality run sims, so they players to get glimpse on Hannover's past, like marching medieval militia, and even to get a look of Carcosa, which is the city of the Yellow King. Another important event, Hannover is host of the world's biggest marksmith festival, the Schützenfest. It goes back to the destruction of a castle, which was just outside the town in 1371, and after the destruction of the castle, there was the first marksman festival, and no one now knows where the castle was. It was completely razed to the ground, not incorporated into the city defenses, which was quite unique. And if you go thinking Mythos, they used Italians at the marksman festival, as you can see here. And this was described as a colorful lizard-like creature. So not like the omnipresent bird, which is normal at the German marksman festivals. So thinking Mythos, I incorporated the Leugier, which is a monster who drains out life and brings madness. Every monster in Cthulhu brings madness. The later part of town, which is now at the area where the castle had been, was in the 1920s one of the poorer parts of town with lots of organized crime, sex work, and gambling. And so it could be, in thinking Mythos, quite possible that there is something sealed under the remains of the castle, as well as the famous serial killer Fritz Hamann lived around this area. I will get back to him quite soon. Another one is Hannover has the Freemasons back then and now, but Hannover is connected with the Illuminati, as one of the Grand Masters, Adolf von Knigge, lived in Hannover, and he wrote the book How to Deal with Human, Umgang mit Menschen, which is some kind of book on etiquette, which is all originally written to tear down class barriers, so you could not distinguish someone from nobility or from the bourgeoisie. And so I think no front backing with How to Deal with Humans. There's the Great Race of Yid, which are time-traveling aliens who send their spirits, their mind, back in time and exchange their minds with humans, and their purpose is to gain wisdom. So it's really easy to say the purpose of the Illuminati is not to get a new world order, but to help the great race to come through the times, how to deal with humans. And there's another nice one, there's the Dark artist called Schwitter, and he used to build up a collage of things he found in the streets or things he liked in his living room, then the other rooms of his flat, and then in the neighbor flat. And this could be, if you think of the Great Race of Yid, a museum for incoming individuals from the Great Race to learn what is human. So this is culture is quite interesting because his Dada lyrics could be also seen as this humor, not because they're really strange. But getting back to serial killer, Fritz Hamann lived in Hannover in the 1920s, and he killed about 27 boys in the age from 10 to 22, and mostly runaways and sex workers. And it's said he sold their flesh as horse meat, so it's always named the Butcher of Hannover. And this is the article of the official called Cthulhu magazine, Cthulhu der Welten, by German publisher. And it talks about the possible connections with the Mythos as a grand mage and something like that, which I don't like that much because he is supposed to deal with him as a normal serial killer because it's so gruesome what he done. And maybe you can connect it back to the Leuge with the Schützenfest because he lived in this area, so maybe this has had to escalate his madness. And because it's always talking about serial killers, this is the monument of the remains of the victims of Fritz Hamann, just to remember them. And because I wasn't quite sure if I made it in time, I let lots of steps out. At the Landesmuseum, the Kunst Provisional Museum of Hannover, there are lots of artifacts from the former colonies of Hannover. Although we are not a harbor city, there was a high colonial officer who brought lots of stuff back, as well as Gottfried Leibniz, who invented binary system, lived in Hannover, and yet about 1,000 partners who sent letters, contact with letters, and he's well known. We could do lots of it, as well as there are lots of history tales to tell at Hannover, because it goes back to the Middle Ages. Even there's a Roman marching camp near the town found just a few years ago. And then another scenario, which is not based with Hannover, but with the Himmelsscheibe of Nebra, which is the old manifestation of the night sky found in Europe. And there's something I mixed up a hippie cult like a Midsummer with the Migo, which is a spacefaring race, and the saga of King Barbarossa, who sleeps in a mountain and will come back in a time of danger like King Arthur, and throwing some large trees just for flavor. And there's a short scenario about another prominent person, Theodor Lessing, but I could tell that maybe later. But so, what is my thesis? Retelling of history can help to understand how myth can become reality, especially in historic events, or what people believe have been historic events, when they are used as justification for injustice in present or future. And for me, personally, especially Cthulhu was always connected with my interest in historic events. So I like to reenact history through Call of Cthulhu. So I go deep down to make it feel real, as well as I read a bit on how magic was used in the Middle Ages, so to give real feeling of for the players. And also this mocking around with history can help to show how easy it is to make up a conspiracy theory, as conspiracies are an integral part of Call of Cthulhu. There's always some cult, there's always a conspiracy, and you have to make up conspiracy. It is quite easy to mix around, to mock around. So for me, it's no big surprise that the QAnon tale of there's elite of evil politicians and people using blood of innocent children to behold their use or to gain power. It's the same tale as in the Middle Ages was told about the Jews. They kill young virgin boys to use their blood in their rituals. So it's important as I said, to look about fact, to check the historical background, to know your conspiracy. So to see how conspiracy works, and for me it is to rely on facts, to have to get back to it about what's real, what's not, especially as now everyone can fool around with artificial intelligence, which is so easy to make up images or whatever. And so I thought with the last one, which is Monster Jäger, monster hunter against right, as you could see Nazis are always monster and got to rip out and see other monsters as well. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Thank you.